welcome to the second part of day 2, first session about TimeSync, presented by Claudia Uhlich and Sebastian Becker. This is about time and synchronization. I think this is not new to everyone, but I think it will be interesting because Deutsche Telekom maintains a time synchronization network. We will hear about that and many other aspects and details around this. So I'm really looking forward for this. And Claudia is with Deutsche Telekom since 2007. She started as a product manager, moved then to global carrier, and is now there in the IP transit arena, and especially you're looking after time synchronization. And Sebastian Becker, many people know him in this room, is the peering manager of 3320 Deutsche Telekom. Enjoy.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. As also already introduced, my name is Claudia, and I'm product manager for time synchronization. Sebastian and myself stepped into that topic 1 year ago, so we are really newbies in that topic, and we thought it would be a great or interesting topic for the DENOG15. That's why we want to introduce to you some something about that time synchronization topic. First of all, we want to give a brief introduction about TimeSync, where it's used and why is it important. Afterwards, some basics about time synchronization for a better understanding. We want to point out the basics of synchronization and the units measurements. Then we also want to give a brief overview about the coordinated universal time, because this is a basic we all need and all use. Also the risks of distributing time information, and last but not least, we want to show how we want to create develop our own synchronization network for the future, and some use cases and future requirements. Time always played an important role for humans and nature. It determines the sequence of events which usually follow one another. On this slide, we show 3 examples to explain this in more detail. In agriculture, seeds must be sown at a certain time, for example in spring, so that cereals or vegetables can be harvested in fall. Modern tractors, for example, are GPS controlled so that they stay in track and no driver is maybe used in future. And this is one of technical innovation which requires synchronization. People are also strongly controlled by time. One famous example is for us all our daily business. Everyone is driven by appointments from Monday to Friday. And after work, it continues. All of us have appointments like doctors, or we also receive invitations. And both are marked with time and place, so that everyone can be right in time and at the right place. Also, performances in cinemas or theaters are timed, so every visitor can join from beginning. And to this day, people are called to prayer by the call of the muezzin or by the church bell, so that everyone can listen to the prayers. And if we consider an orchestra in which all the musicians play a song, but if everyone would play it by his own, this wouldn't sound good at the end. So only with the help of the conductor who sets the beat does each musician knows where its cue is. As we saw, the beat is very important for the orchestra because even a slight offset will cause the song no longer sound harmonious. And if we think of our arriving on Sunday, every one of us used a different kind or different means of transport. And if you, for example, used a train, you maybe had only seconds to reach your connecting train. And these seconds and minutes sometimes decide whether you get it or not. When we think of sporting events, time also plays an important role. In a race, it is important that all runners start at the same time. But at the finish line, it is the seconds are important, or milliseconds are important if a runner loses or wins. The same we can imagine when we think of Formula One. It's not the slowest car who will win the race, it will be the fastest. So, and as you can see, the time becomes more and more precise depending on the event. So microseconds, for example, decide whether a production is successful or not. In today's industry, most production steps are synchronized. As soon as there's a delay on one device, it can have a negative impact on the entire process. This means the production stops or is faulty. These examples illustrate how important synchronization or time synchronization is in our everyday life. And depending on the situation, different types of synchronization kinds or types are used. And for this reason, we want to assign some examples to the respective synchronization types. Let's take another look at the orchestra. Apart from the start of the event, the time of day basically doesn't matter for an orchestra. The beat, on the other hand, is really crucial so that every musician in the orchestra knows its cue. In this case, frequency synchronization is used, and it can be imagined as a rotating hand or kind of pendulum which swings back and forth. Another example from musician is the metronome. By providing a constant pulse, the metronome helps the musician to maintain his tempo, and an understanding of time is not necessary in this case.
And other examples are the power grid. Our European power grid relays on 50 Hertz. And to maintain that, there's a lot of things to do, because otherwise the grid may shut down partially or incomplete if you have too high frequency. You will disconnect certain power sources like solar panels or a power plant. If the frequency goes too low, the grid itself will shut down at a certain point. Parts of an industry plant, for instance, to maintain this 50 Hertz. So this is a very important and daily use case for frequency synchronization. Other examples are the clock hand rotation or the balance of a clock.
Let's go back to the example of the race. During the race, time of day or a beat basically doesn't count or doesn't matter. For the runners, only the seconds or milliseconds are important. If you take a clock into account, it already understands the seconds and can count them. This is a so-called phase synchronization. Phase synchronization is, for example, important for audio and video transmission, so that, for example, picture and sounds are synchronous. Imagine a movie or video conference where someone is talking and he speaks and the sound appears later. So this wouldn't be a real-time experience.
And finally, something we also use daily is our mobile network, because if an antenna is sending the signal and the other one or the other antenna is listening, it will basically overshout every mobile handheld equipment like a smartphone or so from that the other antenna can receive the signal. So that synchronization between the different masts and antennas is very important, that the whole mobile grid works not only between one or within one provider, but even between the providers. So even if it's T-Mobile or if it's Vodafone, that needs to be synchronized, that you can have that mobile network working.
So now we reached the examples where a precision understanding of time is really necessary. In this industry, as we already said, many process steps rely on each other. And for example, the product line in the car manufacturing, process steps like delivering parts or controlling robots are tightly coupled, and with increasing speed and complexity in such processes, the accuracy of time synchronization also must increase. The exact time is also important for invoicing. If customers have volume or time-based tariffs, it must be ensured that the recorded data are billed correctly in terms of time. Time synchronization is also important in share trading or in trading, as the price constantly changes, and in the event of transaction, it must be guaranteed that the buyer is charged the correct price. Another simple example every one of us knows is you can find at the airport, where the takeoff and the landing of machines must be synchronized, otherwise there can be accidents happened. And for all these examples or cases, a correct understanding of time of day is required. So now that we have an overview of different types of synchronization, let's take another look of the units of measurement. Depending on the use case, different times are relevant. Therefore, we once again use our examples from the beginning. If we think of the agriculture, a seasonal view is enough, because you only need to know when to sow your seeds and when you want to harvest them. But going to church on Sunday requires a weekly review or reflection. And if we think in weeks, we would miss our train, because minutes or seconds are crucial here. For runners, milliseconds are enough, while in a production, decisions made in microseconds. But even in the financial sector, microseconds can decide whether profits or losses are made. And future applications such as automation, autonomous driving, or the use of robots will also require even greater accuracy. The aim is to work in the nanosecond range, or even more precisely. And you can see this magenta frame at the range of 1 nanoseconds. Deutsche Telekom is distributing time information with this precision in its own network. Now that we have looked at the type of synchronization and the units of measurement, the question arises how information is distributed. The time information is distributed via satellites or satellite networks. There are two types of networks. One is the global system like GPS Navstar or Galileo, or Beidou. And the other is a geostationary system from India and Japan. And all these networks distribute time information. And after receiving the time, the satellites send it back to Earth, where GNSS or GPS antennas receive them, pick them up, and redistribute it via air as well. So these are two kinds of distribution, and another one is, I guess there's a mistake in. There should stand
fiber.
Fiber, or yeah, fixed network. But yeah, okay. After the antenna received the information, it can also redistribute via fixed network. In this case, glass and copper is used.
So coming now to the standards, one or the other here has already heard about that, because you may use it at certain applications, like you can use SyncEE, synchronous Ethernet. I don't read all the specs here, because I think it's easier for you to do it yourself. But to make you aware, we do have the more precise version, PTP, that delivers the synchronization accuracy as already described in the nanosecond environment, and the more famous network time protocol, the NTP, you use even on your laptop that syncs to a time server somewhere in the internet to at least have a certain accuracy, and the seconds are almost right on your laptop. Sorry. Within DT, or within the coordinated universal time, DT has its own atomic clocks, and this is a heritage out of the old postal days. So together with 259 other time laboratories, we send the frequency to the BIPM, that's the International Bureau of Weights and Measures that sits in Paris. This collects all the values of all the atomic clocks worldwide, and you need to know that each atomic clock runs differently. So there is no clock that is doing UTC exactly. These information will be combined to an average frequency. This is then the so-called international atomic time. Additional information like time of day and the leap seconds is added to this, and together all this then describes the coordinated universal time that you know as UTC. UTC is a purely paper time. Every laboratory receives UTC and knows on how many microseconds or nanoseconds in that case it deviates from the UTC. So you now know how far away your own atomic clock is from that calculated time. This can be then used for the exact time synchronization. UTC information is transmitted then daily by NASA, ESA, to satellite networks by laser, and they spread it then around the world. The so-called GNSS receivers, Global Navigation Satellite Systems, receive the information and can distribute that then to your devices as well. The leap seconds tell you how fast the Earth is finally spinning. Now we come to the risks of the whole thing and where this information can be intercepted. And if you look at satellite transmission, You can have distortions. They can occur during transmission, like reflections between buildings, and the transit times comes longer than it should be. This can lead also to that localization errors on the GPS. The signals are not very strong. They are actually very weak, so it's easy to overlap them with a wrong signal to distract or to deliver false information. This is basically called GNSS jamming or GNSS spoofing if you distribute a wrong time signal to the system. And of course, any anomalies can occur during software updates or hacker attacks. In a fixed network, the risks are a bit more controlled. The transmission via a fixed network is obviously not completely invulnerable to outside environment, but it's harder to do EMP attacks, and the biggest danger is mostly the excavator if you cut a circuit somewhere. To describe how the network is built, actually, we do have the information of the coordinated time. We distribute that in an internal core network between different sites in our network. And then it goes down via a horseshoe into the aggregation network. At the aggregation network connected are then the actual applications or equipment that needs to be synchronized, like the mobile towers with the antennas. We talked about the use cases already. Why it's more important to have a more accurate time is faster mobile services require more precise coordination between the sending and the receiving part of the network, and also between the different providers that are delivering the mobile services. So the scanning gaps, where you have a bit of failover or a bit of grace period between the different directions, like sending or receiving, need to be more closer, shorter, to actually deliver more bandwidth on that application. In data centers, you need that for correlation of time and events. So if you have an outage, you can automatically correlate different events in your network to maybe one exact source, fiber cut or something, in a more easy way if all your devices have the exact same time. Go for it. In future applications, you can think about telemedicine, where a doctor is not actually beside you and doing the surgery, but is somewhere else in the world, and a machine is guided by him. This really needs a very precise handling and a very high synchronization, because otherwise, yeah, the cut will not be as wanted that they do. Another example is guided autonomous driving, where maybe your autonomous car is failing, but there's no one that can steer the car out of the danger zone or back to a garage because some sensors are not working anymore. Today, these cars can be guided via mobile networks in around 15 kilometers per hour, maybe 20, but that's already the fastest they can go, because otherwise the latency and the precision is not high enough to go faster. And if you think that you need to drive the car more kilometers through the city with 15 kilometers per hour, this can be quite annoying for the rest of the traffic. And finally, you have certain applications like trading. We had already to ensure that they get the right price to the exact time. And
yeah.
Will you do the end?
I can try. No, this I hope, yeah, it shows that synchronization, time synchronization is really needed, and that the use cases which are coming up will need more precision like we already have today. And we are really open for discussions. If there are any questions, we have a lot of colleagues who have a really deep know-how, and if everyone or anyone is interested in talking to us, especially in this case, we are really open to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions?
Hello, my name is Peter Royers, speaking for myself. I was expecting that the most challenging issue in time synchronization is latency. And I think you named the word once, but didn't speak much about it. Can you say something about that?
To have a very synchronized time or a synchronized time at a certain point, the latency is something you can, if you know how the signal is transmitted, you can do calculation to remove that again and have that high synchronization. There are devices doing that. It's basically a bit named here, where you have the master clocks in the core network, and you distribute then smaller devices in that horseshoe environment that are basically back synchronized to the master clock, so that they have exact the same time like the master clocks. But you need to be very aware of how the transmission is done, and in a fiber you can measure that, and the correction values can be used then finally to keep that devices in synchronous time.
Any other questions? None? Claudia? Sebastian, thank you for the talk.
Thank you very much.